Back with Undivided. I'm Jason Tobas, super subbing for Wendy Jones and Ashley Clark. They'll be back in a couple of weeks, but for now you're stuck with me, and this section is called Break It Down. This week, we're going to have a little fun. I bring your attention to the Hill Rising. I bring your attention to the battle and the argument between Brianna Joy Gray, Joy Gray, Greyjoy, I'm a Game of Thrones person, I got that mixed up, forgive me, and Alan Dershowitz, very, very famous U.S. constitutional lawyer and the attorney that represented so many people, Mike Tyson, Donald Trump, Epstein. Wow, that's an interesting list, considering Mike Tyson wound up in jail, Trump wound up impeached twice, and Epstein wound up dead. So, all right, so we're going to skip his credentials. We got Alan Dershowitz. Just kidding. The man is one of the blue chip attorneys when it comes to constitutional law. So the conversation started innocent enough. They were really trying to talk about the Colorado Supreme Court and the rulings, and everything seemed friendly and seemed cordial. But I'm going to play some of this, and I'm going to show you that Alan Dershowitz looked like he was conflicted. He looked like he was attempting to be civil, but at the same time, he was on his guard. And let's go to the split screen. And again, let's play.
Many legal commentators that I've listened to say that that is the weakest part of Trump's objection. What do you make of that?
Well, it's a technical objection because the term that's used in the 14th Amendment is support. And that's not in the presidential oath. Presidential oath says preserve, protect, and defend. It's a highly technical argument. The much, much stronger argument is Section 5 of the 14th Amendment, which is as clear as could be. It says the Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions.
All right, pause. And this is why he was under the impression that he came on this show. He's come on a lot of shows already, and he's been talking about the 14th Amendment. He's a constitutional lawyer, and he's talking about something that's been really, really ignored. But there is a little bit of hesitation because I think he had flashbacks of Kim Iverson. He was on Kim Iverson's show, and Kim Iverson dropped a question that he either didn't expect or played like he didn't expect, got really, really defensive, and said he's never coming on our show again. So he is trying to get the word out there and trying to talk to people, but at the same time, he's very leery of what might come next.
Of this article. In other words, it's Congress, not the states. And that makes so much sense when you think of how the 14th Amendment was passed. It was passed by radical Republican Lincoln Reconstructionists. And the last thing they would want is to let states make that decision, because the states include Mississippi, Alabama, all the Confederate states. So it would have been lunacy for the framers to allow the state courts, like the Colorado Supreme Court, to decide what is an insurrection and whether it applies to the president or not. This is a decision that's allocated by the Constitution solely to Congress, and it's a power grab by the Colorado Supreme Court. And by the way, I am not a Trump supporter. I want to see Trump defeated fairly. I want to see him on the ballot. I want to have the right to vote against him, and people should have the right to vote for him. But I don't want an unfair election, even though I would welcome a result of Trump being beaten. I don't want him to be beaten unfairly.
Now, that's a way a lot of people in the United States feel, all right? You got a lot of people who are hard in the paint for Trump, and as Trump said, I can shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not go to jail and get away with it. And for those people, that's a demographic of people, and that's a demographic of people who showed up for Biden not because they supported Biden, but because they really didn't want Trump to be president. And there's also people like Dershowitz, and I think I can add myself into that category, where I didn't vote for the guy. I'm not even sure I particularly like the guy, but there has to be a system of fairness. If you just embrace judicial anarchy, it's only a matter of time before they come for you. Bad boys. What you gonna do when they come for you, right? I mean, at some point they're going to come after someone who's not bad or perceived as being bad. And this is where I agree and co-sign with Dershowitz. Let's move on.
Addressing the comparison between the January 6th insurrection and the protests that have happened around the country, whether during Black Lives Matter or currently at the Capitol, where Jewish Voices for Peace and a number of other groups, largely led by Jewish Americans who are protesting the 20,000 Palestinians that have been killed in the last.
All right, I want to stop right there. And it's cool because I caught her at the pause button. I caught the face looking all glazed and stuff. And I want to pause right there because I want to tell Bree, I know what you're doing. She's got the question. He's there. Dershowitz is there to cover the Colorado Supreme Court ruling, and most likely what's going to happen in the Supreme Court ruling. And Robbie stayed on point with that. Now I want to rewind what she's saying. Let's go back 20 seconds, the way she shaped her question.
The January 6th insurrection and the protests that have happened around the country, whether during Black Lives Matter or currently at the Capitol, where Jewish Voices for Peace and a number of other groups, largely led by Jewish Americans who are protesting the 20,000 Palestinians that have been killed in the last 2 months and are calling for a ceasefire. You know, the question is not whether or not the actual events at the Capitol on January 6th are the insurrection. The question is whether or not the weeks-long alleged fraud attempt to submit a fake state of electors that these Republicans that were involved in the scheme knew were fake and did not reflect the electoral will of the people in 7 states across the country. Hopeful that there was enough ambiguity for Mike Pence to be able to say, let's throw this to the House, which would then vote, because of the numbers of the representatives in the House, would end up being able to throw the election to Donald Trump, despite what the will of the people in those states were. That is a different scheme, right? And do you think that focusing on that scheme, as opposed to just the riot on January 6th, is credibly an insurrection or the same kind of desire to undemocratically overturn the government that you described in the Civil War context or in some of those other historical contexts you alluded to?
Now, pause. Now, she could have stayed on message. She could have stayed with the subject matter of the Colorado Supreme Court. She could have stayed with January 6th. She could have stayed with the insurrection. But she made sure she got just enough about the Israel-Palestine thing to fish for commentary for Dershowitz. This is, you know, it's crazy. Like, Bree's one of my favorite anchors. I wouldn't say journalist. I'm not sure if she does a whole lot of journalism, except on the Bad Faith podcast. She definitely asks questions. She doesn't really let anyone off the hook. And there's a little bit of anchor reporter thing going in there where she leaves it out there, and at the end does the rinse and repair and brings it back to January 6th, brings it back to the subject of insurrection. And let's see how Dershowitz responds.
Absolutely not. Insurrection requires violence. By the way, I want to comment a little bit on Jewish Voice for Peace and Jews. Jewish Voice for Peace is not a Jewish organization. It's a fraud. They're mostly non-Jews. They're radical revolutionaries, and they use the word Jewish, but they're not Jewish. And the same thing is maybe 1% of Jews support Hamas, but they're vocal and they use the word Jew when they go and they protest. But don't be fooled. A Jewish Voice for Peace is not Jewish. It has no voice and it doesn't favor peace. But I think an insurrection requires violence. What you're describing is a legal tactic. Maybe it's illegal and maybe the lawyers should be punished for it, but it's not an insurrection. An insurrection does not involve making legal arguments, even if they're frivolous legal arguments.
All right, pause. Now, let's take the time and let's stop and let's do a little bit of what Jewish Voice for Peace is, just to keep everybody up to speed so we're not spinning in circles here. All right? So, zooming in on this, Jewish Voice for Peace is an anti-Zionist, left-wing Jewish activist organization in the United States that supports the boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaign in Israel. Jewish Voice for Peace was formed in 1996 by Tony Kirchner. There's a name we all know, Noam Chomsky. There's another name we know, Sarah Schulman, and others. They criticize and what describes as severe human rights violations that Israel engages in every day. So a little bit of extremist group here. They're declared They declared itself anti-Zionist and not necessarily anti-Semitic. I suppose, regardless of what was voted in the House or in the Senate, there's still a distinction between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. You can certainly leave comments in the comment section, and we could talk about that. But for now, that's an overview or just a general thing of what Jewish Voice for Peace. This is according to Wikipedia. So let's go back to the video.
So for one, I have interviewed leadership at Jewish Voice for Peace, both Jewish. One woman's father is a religious figure, a rabbi, I believe. I have spoken to many members of Jewish Voice for Peace who are themselves Jewish. And I would agree with you that most Jewish people, of course, don't support Hamas, but neither does Jewish Voice for Peace, which is very specifically advancing a demand for a ceasefire after 20,000, again, civilians have been killed in Gaza. Go ahead.
Jewish Voice for Peace started to condemn Israel and blame Israel for the rapes and murders before Israel fired a single shot on October 8th. It's in my book. I wrote a book called War Against the Jews. I document Jewish Voice for Peace.
Now, I'm telling you, pause. I'm telling you, Dershowitz is ready for this. He said he has it in his book, right? Did he have to look for the book? Look back there. He's got a whole bunch of books behind him. It's not like he had to turn around and look. He didn't have it in his book bag. He had it right there on the desk because at some point he was prepared for Brianna Joy Gray to ask questions that may or may not be related. And he was prepared because I'll say this again. There are interviews where he's gotten blindsided on sexual misconduct in regards to the Epstein thing, which Kim Iverson dropped on him that he felt unfairly. And I don't think it's unfair. I think as long as you get the question ahead of time, and which Kim Iverson showed receipts that she did, and you if you're a journalist or if you're an anchor, it would be journalistic malpractice to not ask some of these questions. But Chomsky is more prepared to see other things that he's not prepared for coming a mile away. Maybe he should have seen the Epstein question coming from Iverson. Maybe he didn't. But now he's talking. Sorry.
It started blaming Israel for the rapes, the murders, and the beheadings on October 8th. The ceasefire is just something that they've come to lately in order to increase their power. They are pro-Hamas. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Ask the Anti-Defamation League. It's an anti-Semitic organization with the name.
Wait a minute. Pause. Did he just say ask the Anti-Defamation League? All right, guys, let's go back on our computer. Here we go. Are you ready? Let's go. All right, here we go. Zooming in. According to the BostonReview.net, the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, is a Jewish non-governmental organization based in the United States whose mission is to stop the defamation of Jewish people and to secure justice and fair treatment for all. All right. So what this guy is saying, that if you want to be sure, if you're looking for a reliable source of information that Jewish and Israel people are right, ask the Jewish and Israel people. Got it. All right. We're all up to speed. Let's move on.
Jewish. And when they interview you, they send their 4 or 5 front people who are Jews to persuade you that it's a Jewish organization. But it's not. It's a fraudulent organization.
Well, let me ask you about this. There has been not an attempt, but a successful effort to, at a congressional level...
Dude, why she keep blinking like that? Is that like a coping strategy? I'm playing, Bree. Come on.
Anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism the way that it seems like you're doing now, since Jewish Voice for Peace, very specifically, when you talk about condemnations of Israel, more specifically what they did following the horrific attacks on October 7th, was to point out that there's been an ongoing occupation of Gaza, that the people who live in Gaza are largely those who were forced out of their homes during the 1948 Nakba, or the descendants of those people, and that to have real peace in the region, you have to have self-determination for that group of people who cannot continue to live in conditions that humanitarian groups have described as an open-air prison. Is that, are you saying that you think it's appropriate to conflate that kind of a criticism with anti-Semitism itself in the way that Congress has done, which many people on the right and the left have criticized as an abridgment of the free speech rights of Americans to associate freely and to criticize a foreign government?
You're testifying now, so please let me speak and make my point.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, she's testifying. Pause. She's testifying, but she also has to shape her question. If this has turned into a conversation where she doesn't just ask questions and then Alan Dershowitz and all of his wisdom and whatever just educates people on things that they don't know. So Bree shaping the question also shapes the question for the audience watching, right? Because this could be a conversation between the two of us, but Bree in her integrity has an obligation to make sure that we, the audience, understands what's going on. We don't need a lawyer going on the show and saying, you guys don't understand. And I'll explain it to you, and then he explains it, and we still don't understand. So, in fairness to Bree, she is testifying. She's not just asking questions. I mean, this is no longer I'm just innocently asking things. And man, my pause button sucks for Bree. Look at that. That looks like a zombie apocalypse right there. But yeah, we got to be fair. It's not one or the other. She is testifying, but she's also shaping the question. Let's move on.
I don't Zionism with anti-Zionism. I do equate support for Hamas with anti-Semitism. Jewish Voice for Peace supports Hamas. They praise Hamas. They think.
Pause. That's a large demographic of people he's talking about, and I don't think it's unfair for him to feel that way as well. You know, if you have people that are actually saluting Hamas for what they did, there's a lot of people that are going to feel a certain way about that, right? Some people are like, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, but I think on a general level, and I don't mean to speak for everybody, like if you kill civilians because your civilians got killed, it's not, you know, an eye for an eye here might leave both people blind, but that's my virtue. I have to stick my virtue in because it's my show.
The rapes and the murders were good.
Did you hear the sigh?
And the National Lawyers Guild praised Hamas.
Go back.
Supports Hamas. They praise Hamas. They think the rapes and the murders were good.
Did you hear that? She's like, oh God, here we go again. Well, let's see where it's going.
And the National Lawyers Guild praised Hamas. And 33 Jewish groups at Harvard, groups at Harvard praised Hamas. Praising Hamas is anti-Semitic criticism.
Can you provide a citation, Professor Dershowitz, for that proposition that Jewish Voice for Peace praised Hamas?
You're dominating this conversation. You're going to let me finish.
Pause. She is dominating the conversation. She's an anchor. That's what anchors do. And I'm not saying she's right, but, and this is where Dershowitz is right. You can't shape a question in a lengthy way that you do and not allow the person to answer the question. If your question's one-fold, a two-fold, a three-fold, you can't cut him off in the middle of answering the first part of that and do whatever. This is not MSNBC. This is The Hill. This is on YouTube, and you do have maybe they have time constraints, but maybe they don't. But it's not like they have bills to pay in this 1 hour time frame where they got to go to a commercial. So let him answer the question, Bree.
I am in favor of a two-state solution. I have been critical of Israel. I am a Zionist. I don't believe that anti-Zionism is necessarily equatable to anti-Semitism, but it often is when you combine it with pro-Hamas sentiments and support for butchery and murder. Yes.
Pause. False dichotomy, Mr. Dershowitz. You're supposed to be a good debater. You're not. This isn't an argument where you're on one side or you're the other and there's no one in the middle. In fact, the majority of the population's in the middle. There's a handful of people that are extremists that are pro-Hamas that were glad a whole bunch of Jewish people got killed on October 7th. And of course, there's a bunch of people in Israel that are like 20,000 people, 17,000 civilians, half of them are kids, acceptable loss, this is war, get over it, right? So somewhere in the middle is this huge population that just wants the violence to stop. So don't play yourself. Move on.
Then it becomes anti-Semitism.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I would like to ask if you have I apologize for that, Professor Dershowitz, so perhaps you could provide a citation for the proposition that Jewish Voice for Peace praised Hamas, in your words. That's a very specific allegation for a Jewish group that I am very familiar with, have interviewed with at length, and have never seen any evidence of the like.
Book is in my book, and the quotations and the statements that were made and the signs that were held up at Jewish for Peace demonstrations have praised Hamas, have supported Hamas.
Wait a minute. Oh, hold the phone, hold the iPad, hold your desktop, hold your cell, hold your AT&T service, hold your Verizon wireless. Don't pay your bill right now. Did he just say, the proof is in my book? Did you just say, read my book and find out on a news show where an anchor is asking you a legitimate question? What is this, Scooby-Doo? Hurry up, come on, get involved. There's a mystery to solve. Get out of here. Come on.
And they're fooling you. They're sending you the 6 Jews in the organization to fool you. They're not sending you the hundreds of radical.
Did you see her face? And I'm great with this pause button again. She's like, she said, oh wow, 6 Jews, all 6. And I stopped this because I got to say, somewhere on the other side of the screen is Robbie just saying, oh man, I just wanted to talk about the Constitution. I talked to Brie about Israel and Palestine at every turn. I just needed a breather. Can't we just talk about the Supreme Court? Can't we just keep it on there? How did this episode get hijacked? And I'll explain later, but for now, let's move on.
Socialist non-Jews who formed this revolutionary group that really, in the end, wants to overthrow the government of the United States. And they were very clever. They used Jewish Voice for Peace to pretend that Jews somehow support Hamas, and they don't.
So, Professor Dershowitz, is your contention that you have a book and a citation in front of you, but you're unable to give an example of Jewish Voice for Peace actually condemning Hamas?
Wait a second, pause. I got to pause again. Look at Robbie's face. Robbie's face is like, do you have an answer, Alan? And Bree, you suck. This is I mean, you gave me the first 6 minutes because so now when the show is over, you can't say you didn't give him the time to ask his questions. But look at that face. His face is twofold right now. His first face is Bree with her eyes closed again. You suck for this. You suck for this. And the second part of his face is, Alan, I know you're an attorney, and I know you argued cases, and you think you're a good debater. There are levels to this. When you have a good anchor, a TV anchor or news anchor that's also an attorney, that's also a good debater, there are levels to this, man. You're double B, she's open level. Move on.
Seen it. I was condemning Hamas? No, they never condemned Hamas.
I'm sorry, praising Hamas, defending Hamas, praising Hamas in your words?
With my own eyes, I've seen signs that Jewish Voice for Peace demonstrations, Palestine will be free from the river.
She gave you not 1, not 2, but 3 opportunities to cite a source. The first time you said, look at my book. And the second is my sources. I saw it with my own eyes. Take my word for it. We, as a population, might not take your word for it in light of the fact that you came into this episode and all your sources that you referred to are biased. The Anti-Defamation League is Jewish run. Of course, Jewish people are going to stand up for each other, just like someone who voted for Trump is going to make excuses for Trump, and the people that voted for Obama are going to make excuses for Obama. I'm not saying that your source is not reliable, but don't be surprised when people don't jump to that level of trust when these people have a historical pattern of looking out for their own, which is okay. Looking out for your own is okay, but it doesn't make you the spokesperson for people on the other side of that aisle too. Let's move on.
I see.
Clean Palestine.
She said, I see. I'm sorry. Move on. My bad.
Of dirty Jews. Yes, they support Hamas.
Okay. So do you have evidence? You've seen a sign of a Jewish Voice for Peace member holding a sign that says clean Palestine of dirty Jews? That's a pretty remarkable sign.
Yeah,
I feel like would have gone quite viral if someone had some evidence of that.
Their signs say clean. Clean is a Nazi term that was used in the 1930s and 40s to refer to dirty Jews. Palestine will be free from the river to the sea.
So you're saying you did not see a sign that said clean Palestine of dirty Jews. You're saying that you saw a sign with the word clean and you're reading into that?
Wait a minute. I just figured this out. Bree has a mute button. Bree has a mute button, so when he tries to cut her off, he looks like Johnny Quest, where his mouth is doing, and maybe a couple of words come out. Or maybe you guys used to watch those kung fu films on Saturday? Hey, you. Yeah, you. You're dead. Yep. That's what that looked like. Pause button. Good, and good for Bree, because Bree has been on so many shows as a guest where she's trying to form an answer and they just interrupt her. Yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. And she did kind of a media rounds a few weeks ago and was like, dude, I got to get a sentence in. So there's no maybe. She had this question in the bag as bait, and she hooked him, hook, line, and sinker. And the pause button and the mute button is also evidence that Bree tried to blindside him here. Let's just call it what it is. I support the show. I watch the show every day, and the world is better with Bree than without. I'll tell all of you that, and I think I speak for many of the fans who know that. But this is some gangster stuff by an anchor and a journalist and a lawyer.
Of course, I'm reading into it. Wouldn't you?
I see.
Yeah,
Earlier, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And she caught him. He's saying he didn't say that, and he did say that. He did say dirty Jews, and there is no sign out there. And he said there were signs out there. And now he's saying he didn't say it, and he's paraphrasing. Which one is it, Alan?
Somebody talked about get rid of the unclean African Americans. Wouldn't you read something into that? Of course you would read something into that.
Well, if a sign said get rid of the unclean African Americans, I absolutely would. But you just said that you did not see a sign that said clean Palestine of the dirty Jews. You're editorializing from a sign that I don't know what it said, that used the word clean.
Dude, she's like Mehdi Hassan with a clean background, with a cleaner resume. Bree, are you auditioning for MSNBC? You would only last a month. They would tell you things that you're allowed to talk about, and you'd be out of there yourself. You'd quit before you ever got fired.
We're dirty Jews. I saw signs that said clean Palestine or clean the world. They're all over the place. You see them in almost every demonstration in Europe and in New York and all over the country. And
wait, I got to get it with the eyes open.
To the
There's a reason why I catch her with her eyes closed. The woman blinks like 10 times every 5 seconds. All right, now I got them open, and that face says, sure, you're right. Let's move on.
Has been deemed to be calling for the end of Israel, calling for the Hamas charter to be satisfied. No two-state solution. I have a question for you. Have you seen a single sign at any demonstration calling for a single-state solution? I will give you $100 for your favorite charity if you can find me a single sign at any demonstration that supports a two-state solution, which I support.
Oh, well.
All right, check it out. Well, here's a sign, and it's in front of Washington, D.C. Two-State Solution Act. Thank you, Angie Levin and Alan Dershowitz. Where's my money? I'll take that in 10s and 20s.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Let's talk about a two-state solution. I wanted to come back to that, actually.
Let's talk about it briefly.
Rob's like,
Netanyahu
can we please
has been
move
very
on?
Publicly speaking, especially to his own constituents in Israel, about how they should continue to support him because he will guarantee that there won't be no two-state solution. Of course, he's been saying this for a number of years, long before October 7th. That's obviously widely out of step with what you and what President Biden are saying are their long-term policy goals. What do you make of that?
Let me answer, please. Let me answer. Israel offered the two-state solution in 47, 48, 67, 94, 2000, 2001, 2005, 2007. Israel has repeatedly offered a two-state solution. The Palestinians have said no. I sat down.
Pause. Now, I don't know historically how one country offers a solution to another, but I can tell you this. When you take a look at the dates, he is really, really, really clever because he dances around the dates where he knows Israel has a president that's not even interested in the two-state solution. President Netanyahu from 2009 to 2020 has been the prime minister there, and he has consistently said he is not interested in the two-state solution. Netanyahu, who was also the president from 1996 to 99, those aren't any of the dates that he mentioned, right? And I don't know about Israel, but I can tell you this. If you look at the UN Assembly actually trying to instill self-determination and a two-state solution, I'm not going to go through all of the dates, but I can give you an example. Here's an example right here. According to the time of Israel, the UN panel votes 163 to 5 in support of Palestinian statehood. This is 2005. This is a resolution that for a two-state solution, or at least self-determination for the Palestinians. And the voting was 163 to 5. Now, of the 5 people that voted against this, Alan Dershowitz, you're never going to believe who voted against it, which one of those 5 states. I'll give you 3 guesses. One was the United States. I'll just skip it. The other one was Israel. It was the United States, Israel, and some Indonesian country. I don't even know the other 3 states. We can actually scroll down and actually get the total count later, but that's not my point. My point is you can pick the year. My point is you can pick the year. And multiple years where the UN had had a resolution to vote for a two-state solution or a self-determination, and it's been triple-digit countries voting for it, and sometimes it's been 5 countries against it, 9 countries against it, sometimes it's 10 countries against it, sometimes it's just 2 countries against it. And Alan Dershowitz, 2 of those countries out of the 5, 2 of those countries out of the 9, 2 of those countries out of the 15, 2 of those countries were always the United States and Israel. So I don't know what the hell you're talking about. So either you're talking about something else where Israel offered something privately when no one else was involved, or there's a liar. There's a pants on fire thing going here. All right, let's move on.
We offered a two-state solution. The Palestinians have said no. I sat down with Abbas in Ramallah, and I said to him, if you look at that you would recognize Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people, I will make a phone call right now to my friend Benjamin Netanyahu, and I will get him to agree to a two-state solution. But they have to go first.
Pause. That must be a hell of a friendship, because Benjamin Netanyahu has been hard in the paint against it. So how deep is your friendship? How deep is your love, as the BJs would say? I want to know. I really need to know, because we're living in a world of fools breaking us down when they all should let us be.
First, and they have to say that they recognize the right of Israel to exist as the nation state of the Jewish people. The Palestinians don't want it. They could have had a state repeatedly. They are the worst candidate for support. The Kurds couldn't have ever had a state. The Uyghurs couldn't have ever had a state. The only reason Palestine gets so much support is because they're alleged oppressors of Jews. It is anti-Semitic to the core. The Palestinians are lucky that they are allegedly oppressed by Jews. If they were oppressed by the Syrians, like the Kurds are, or the Iraqis, or the Chinese, like the Uyghurs are, they would get no support at all. You cannot understand the support allegedly for Palestine, although it doesn't support a two-state.
Hold up. Hold the phone. Did this man just say the Palestinians were lucky to have the Jews oppressing them? As far as oppressors of choice, what are we gonna go? Are we gonna go through the list of all the people oppressing people and going hard in the paint? They should consider themselves lucky. I mean, Christmas just passed. Did they send a Christmas card in the mail, or a Hanukkah card? It was Ramadan. Did they send God's wishes and blessings for them being their oppressor? Are you insane? Are you insane? I'll do one. I'm going to look at my screen right here. All right? Let's do a MasterCard commercial, okay? The number of Ukrainian civilians that were killed since February 2022 to the present, that is going on close to 2 years. 10,000. Pretty good number. Big number. Gazans killed since October 7th to the present. 20,000. Civilians, out of those 20,000, the number that were civilians, 17,487. Listening to Dershowitz pontificate this nonsense, priceless. How dare you? How dare you say someone should be grateful? What the hell is wrong with you? What the hell is wrong with you? Man, Bree, you started this, but man, I was on his side in the beginning, but let's move on.
Solution, unless you look deeply into the anti-Semitism that lies behind much of that support. Not all of it, but much of it.
There's a lot to get into there, and we obviously don't have time to get into it all here. I would note that the right of return was a crucial aspect of what Palestinians wanted that was never offered to them, and along with I'm sorry? Wait, but wait a minute. You accused me, sir, you accused me of filibustering. Well, Israel has given a right.
Do you hear the keyboard slap? That keyboard slap is the mute button, and Robbie's just like, you know, Bree, we got to have a conversation about this. Robbie did not see this coming. And that's that. And as anchors that work with each other, maybe the conversations with each other, there's some things you don't see coming. And Bree, as a lawyer, you should never ask a question you don't know the answer to. Bree planned this, and Rob didn't see it coming. And Dershowitz certainly didn't see it coming, but he was already on wired mode because of previous interviews where people ask him crazy questions.
To return to people from the Jewish diaspora who have no personal ties to Israel at all. But
many others. But let me
Professor Dershowitz,
right, let's each get a final word in on this subject.
I haven't even asked my question. I wanted to ask it to wrap it up.
You don't ask questions. You express points of view. You should be a guest, not a host.
Well, that's fine. Well, that's why I'm going to ask you this following question. Norm Finkelstein, who is an expert on this issue, has offered to debate you. If I could just ask this, Professor Dershowitz.
His heart, every part of his heart, to see these murders, rapes. How dare you cite Norman Finkelstein? He's a bigot, an anti-Semite, and a supporter of Hamas, isn't he?
All right. Well, no, I actually think that.
Pause. I was going to get into who Norman Finkelstein is, but he's one of the most foremost scholars as far as the conflict is concerned. He's been studying it since 1982. He's been to Gaza and Israel and back and many, many places, probably more than anyone else as far as studying this conflict is concerned. So Dershowitz might be a little angry and crass because they were on Piers Morgan, and I don't think he got a lot of airtime because Finkelstein speaks a little bit slower, but also, let's move on.
He's a renowned scholar whose parents survived the Warsaw Ghetto and is the foremost authority on what's going on in Gaza. But I wanted to put to you, would you be willing to have a longer form conversation with Norm Finkelstein either here or in another format of a show to unpack some of these debates?
I already have done that. I did it on the Piers Morgan show, and he just monopolized the whole conversation. He went 14 minutes, and I was given only 8 minutes.
Well, I
would only do it at a talk.
Wait a minute. You were on Piers Morgan, the man who starts every interview and going to Palestinians and Gazans and Muslims and saying, do you condemn Hamas? Do you condemn Hamas? He has been the biggest advocate for Israel. And what you're trying to tell me is Norman Finkelstein got more time than you on the Piers Morgan show. That doesn't say as much about Norman Finkelstein as much as it says about how much of a fail you are. That is the show where everybody gangs up on Palestinians and Muslims, and you only got 8 minutes. That's a fail. Let's move on.
The exact amount of time accorded to everyone, then I might do it. But I'm not going to do it with getting 14 minutes.
I agree that Professor Finkelstein can be a little long-winded. I would be happy to host an unbounded, time-bounded conversation of that type with the two of you if you were willing.
Let me be very clear. You are not a moderator. I will do it with you as an opponent. I will have a debate with you moderated by the gentleman on the other side. But you're not a moderator.
Look, he says she's not a moderator, but I got to tell you, the one thing you watch some of these debates, and the only thing you pray that the moderator brings with her is a mute button. And she came equipped with a mute button, so she's already qualified. And look at that picture. I finally got it right. This girl blinking 100 miles an hour. Look at that. He's like, you are not a moderator. And she's like, yeah, sure I'm not. And even Robbie's like, come on, guys.
I'd be happy to do that as well, Professor.
You consent, I don't.
Well, I'm sure we can find someone that satisfies you.
All right, we will actually work towards setting up a fully functioning debate on this subject between the two of you where there's enough time for both to respond, and we get, that actually sounds like a really good idea. I was joking when I said I don't consent to do it. I would happily do it. I want to get in one more question.
Sorry, he just said he'd happily do it. Come on. You were hearing that, hello, blah, blah, blah. That was the song I was thinking when he was sitting there just silent like this. Nobody does that face, that FML face better than Robbie Suave or Suave.
On the subject at hand, and then we do have to let you go. Can you just predict for us whether you think the Supreme Court will take up the Colorado case, how likely it is that we'd hear from them if they're going to do that?
Yes, I think they will give a stay in early January, set oral argument probably for February, and have a decision likely in March.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Dershowitz, for joining us. We will be in contact with you again to hope to have a longer discussion on the Israel-Palestine issue. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, that was fun. Wasn't that awesome? Guys, I had a good time with that. I mean, maybe your definition of a good time is a little bit different than mine, and I totally get it, you know. Look, I'm not, this isn't the only way I have a good time, but for this show, we're going to do one a week where we break down some of the videos. Some will probably be more important, where we could break down facts and provide just more thought-provoking stuff. But this was more of a guilty pleasure. You know, the cat's away, the mice play. No Wendy Jones here, no Ashley Clark here. They let the inmate run the asylum, so this is what you get on this clip, and I hope you had a little fun with it. Thanks to Sabby Sabs for kind of the idea. And like I said before, and I'll say it again, good artists create, great artists steal. So I'm sorry I stole the idea, but not really. I'm here. If I was sorry, I wouldn't have stole it. So Brianna Joy Gray is also a graduate of Harvard Law School. Dershowitz also teaches at Harvard. Rob, I don't think is an attorney, but he's the head editor, the editor-in-chief of Reason magazine, which has a lot of thought-provoking things. Rob, educating you people, Rob is a libertarian. Bree was running Bernie Sanders' campaign when she ran against Hillary, and she's kind of like left to the left. She's not a Democrat anymore per se, but she still has left-leaning values. Rob is a libertarian, meaning that I don't care what you do as long as it doesn't cost me money. And Dershowitz, big up to him coming on the show. Also big up to him having kind of like this ready button. He had the book ready. You could tell by his face, like, I'm glad to be here, but there's something brewing, that there's a question I'm not going to see coming that might get me upset, and I'm ready for it. And he wasn't ready for it. And I know Risen's going to disagree with me, but Bree, that it was kind of a blind side. She shaped the question as a hook. And if he bit, then the conversation gets hijacked. And her instinct, it was her instinct and her impulse to think that he would bite. That's why she shaped the question like that. It was a passive-aggressive blindside. Let's call it what it is. You even had the mute button ready because you knew he's going to cut you off, and you knew that it might get emotional. So the question that she snuck in there was particularly knowing. I'm not saying Bree's a sneaky person or there's something devious about her. That's the job. That's an anchor. That's what anchors are supposed to do. They're supposed to ask thought-provoking questions on the principle that the people have a right to know. And some journalists do it for themselves, and they're not doing it for anything as noble as the people. And there's some people like Bree who do think the people have a right to know. So okay, it came from the right place, but let's not paint it as this thing where it was innocent. It wasn't innocent. You are guilty, but you are also righteous. That's all we have for the Undivided. Thank you, Ashley and Wendy Jones, for allowing me to just do this segment, one of the three clips. Hope you watch the other two clips. A lot of thought-provoking stuff, a lot of fun. But for now, I'm Jason Tobas, and this is Undivided.